Hey everyone, welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. This time taking a look at some builds with a budget focus using parts that are unlocked once you hit level 3 traders. In my last builds video, we looked at budget options from level 1 and 2 traders, and now we're moving up to the next level of unlocks and seeing what we can put together. Level 3 traders are a pretty big step up from level 2, and you unlock a ton of new gear, especially mags and ammo for weapons that are basically not usable at lower levels like the MP7 and the VSS. There's lots of interesting things to mess around with at this stage in the game, though ironically, some of the components that you need to really max out your budget builds are unlocked at max level traders. I've tried not to go much over 100,000 rubles for any of these builds, which I think is a pretty good range for a solid build that performs well enough to work in PvP, and these definitely aren't your only options at this level, just the ones that I chose to cram into this video. So with that intro out of the way, let's take a look at the first build, and one that I think is criminally underrated as a budget PvP weapon. When you think of the MP7, chances are you don't think of it as a budget setup, mostly because it's regarded as one of the best SMGs in the game, and you mostly see it in highlight videos decked out with a suppressor, an expensive foregrip, and the 40 round mags that you unlock at level 40. When you strip away some of these expensive additions though, the MP7A1 specifically is in my opinion one of the best budget run and gun weapons in the game. Considering the suppressor is more expensive than the gun it's attached to, and you don't need a foregrip on this build, you're basically just looking at the gun, a sight, and optionally a tactical device. You're stuck with the 30 round mags from level 3 traders, but as long as you watch your sprays, it's pretty easy to compensate for the mag size. The mid-tier FMJ SX ammo is also as good as 9mm 7N31 for something like 1/4 of the price per shot or even less, and it can be bought in fairly large quantities from Peacekeeper level 3. Really, the only problem with this thing from a budget standpoint is that it's never coming back through insurance if you die, because any PMC who took you down is going to fold this thing into 2 slots and stick it in their backpack. For my simple MP7 build, I like to just grab the MP7A1 off the market for around 40,000 rubles on the low end to about 60,000 on the high end. After I buy it, I just put a sight on it, and generally I like to stick with one of the EOTech holo sights for about 20,000 rubles on the market or from Peacekeeper. You can use the Cobra sight for about half the price, but personally I find the holo sight works much better with the MP7's recoil pattern. Next, I just add a tactical device, in this case the X400 flashlight, and then the build is pretty much complete. For the overall stats here, you've got 51 recoil and about 67 ergonomics, and the total cost of the build ranges from about 70,000 rubles on the low end to about 90,000 on the high end, depending on how much the MP7 is on the market when you buy it. Really, the only limitation on this build is the 30 round mags and the fact that you can't get a suppressor on here for a decent price. For a budget focused setup though, you can't really go wrong with a simple MP7, and the FMJ SX rounds will get you plenty of power for a reasonable price. Next in this video, we'll be looking at a rifle that has a bit of a cult following in Tarkov, the 5.56 DT MDR, which has become a favorite among a lot of players as a mid-range rifle that packs pretty nice features for the price and is very simple to put together, just like the MP7. The 5.56 MDR is a pretty solid choice, offering good accuracy and velocity, decent base stats, and a good selection of mid-range ammo between the M856A1 and M855A1 rounds. Plus, you can use any M4 type magazine, including the 60 rounders, which are fairly easy to get a hold of. While it has a much lower fire rate compared to other rifles using 5.56, that helps with recoil control on full auto, and the price is pretty good at about 50,000 rubles on the flea market. Like the MP7, you really only need a few parts, and on this build, I'll start with the muzzle device. I like to run this rifle suppressed, and you have 2 options for a decent budget suppressor. First, you can use the Surefire SF3P muzzle device from Mechanic level 2, and then you add the RC2 suppressor, which is around 30,000 rubles on the flea market. The other suppressor option I would recommend for a budget setup is the KAC QD compensator with the NT4 suppressor attached. Both of these setups have similar stats and around the same price, so it's worth checking which is cheaper at any given time. You can also try the Fur-Franz compensator from Peacekeeper level 3, plus the concussion reduction device off the flea market, but this is around 20,000 rubles by itself, and personally I think you're better off suppressed. Next, I generally like to use the AFG M-Lock foregrip on the MDR because it doesn't need any extra rails, and it's got pretty good stats for the price. For a tactical device, you need to add a 2.5-inch M-LOK rail, and then you can add your preferred part, but I use the X400 flashlight on my builds. The sight on here is the Cobra Reflex sight with the sight shade attached for a very cheap red dot sight that also increases your ergonomics slightly. When it's all put together, you've got 61 recoil and about 70 ergonomics for a total price of around 110,000 rubles, which I think is a pretty great price for a suppressed rifle. Unfortunately, M855A1 ammo has doubled in price recently, which does hurt the budget status of this build a little bit, but it's still a good choice if you're looking for a rifle that performs well above its price tag. For the third build in this video, we'll be looking at an old classic that has bounced between being a budget build and a meta build many times over the years, and that's the VSS. Originally, it was sort of a niche weapon that wasn't really used too much. Then for about a year, it was the most used weapon in Tarkov. And then it got nerfed into the dirt, and finally, most recently, it's achieved a middle ground that makes it a nice target for budget builds, going for about 50 to 60,000 on the flea market. The VSS is most effective at close range, where the high damage and fire rate shred other players, even with the cheapest SP5 ammo. At level 3 proper, you finally unlock the magazines for this rifle, and the SP6 ammo as well, and before that, you're going to need to gamble on the flea market for a fair price. The first part you're going to want to add to a budget VSS build is the TAZ 6P29M mount, which is sold by Jaeger level 1 oddly enough and lets you attach a tactical device and a foregrip. For the grip, I went with the RK5 from Skier level 3, giving you decent stats for a pretty cheap price compared to most other foregrips. For the tactical device, you can use what you want, but I'm always a fan of the X400 flashlight. Finally, for your sight, you can make a few choices. The pure budget option is the Cobra Dovetail Reflex sight with the sight shade, but if you want the sight lower down, you can also buy the SVD low side mount at mechanic level 3. You can then get the other version of the Cobra sight and the shade, or any other sight you prefer, and attach it to this mount so you aren't aiming so high above the barrel. When it's all put together, you've got 68 recoil and around 60 ergonomics for a total cost of about 85,000 rubles, though this may fluctuate a bit based on the market prices. The recoil is higher than it used to be on the VSS, but the SP5 or SP6 ammo has great stats for the price, so if you make your shots count, it drops your target pretty quickly. For the number 4 spot in this video, I've got a little SMG that has a special place in my heart, the MP9N, which is basically a little budget vector with smaller mags and more recoil. Ever since they added the MP9, I've been a huge fan of it. You can use it fully kitted with a suppressor or bare bones with just a cheap sight, and it works well either way, and in my opinion, it just looks really cool and I really like using it. It's one of the shortest weapons in the game, meaning it's perfect for pushing corners and tight hallways, and it fires at 1100 rounds per minute, so it eats through armor and kills through leg meta really fast. The disadvantages to this thing are the small-ish 30 round mags and higher recoil compared to the 9mm Vector. But it's also about 1/4 of the price and technically will have a faster time to kill if you land your shots. You can pick this thing up for between 20 to 30,000 rubles on the market, and if you want to be really budget, all you need to add is something like the Cobra Reflex sight and you can just start running around with this thing and spraying people down. I like to build it out a little myself though, starting with the B&T MP9 suppressor adapter, which is pretty cheap and has a thread for the suppressor. The MP9 suppressor is sold by Mechanic level 3, and you won't find it on the flea market, though thankfully he gives you a fair price of 28,000 rubles. Next, I add the X400 flashlight to the bottom of the suppressor mount, and then the build is complete, since there isn't anything else that you can even change out. When it's all put together, you've got 49 recoil and about 75 ergonomics, for a total price of about 75,000 rubles if you run it suppressed, or only around 50,000 if you ditch the suppressor. I kind of expect this to be a controversial choice, but personally, I just find the MP9 to be extremely fun to use. I love how it looks, and the price is pretty good for what you get. It's just so satisfying to hip fire this at 1100 RPM and watch people fold over instantly. Plus, you can craft both of the best ammo types for this gun, so it's pretty useful. For the final section of this video, I just wanted to go over a few honorable mentions for purely budget weapons you can start using effectively once you hit level 3 traders. These are setups that are actually remarkably effective for their price, but technically aren't really builds because you don't add anything to them. They're also fairly specialized and require you to be sort of an expert in leg meta or an expert in headshots to use effectively. First up, we have the absolute bane of my existence as someone who really prefers running lightweight armor with no stomach protection, the KS-23 shotgun. At first, this thing was just a meme with the flashbang rounds, but people soon discovered that it's an absolute monster in terms of damage output if you can just nail someone in the leg, arm, or stomach. I can personally attest to regularly being brought from 440 HP down to 100 or even 50 or less health remaining after a single shot from this thing hits my stomach or arms and spreads the damage out, completely ignoring my expensive armor and helmet. This thing makes me fear the rats again, and it's definitely worth a try once you unlock proper level 3 and can buy this for about 45,000 rubles total. Next up, we have the 5.7, which is sort of a classic weapon that you see mostly naked players running around with, nailing expert headshots on fully kitted dudes and walking out of the map with a new loadout. The 5.7 is technically available at level 2 Peacekeeper for a barter trade, but level 3 is where you unlock the good ammo and the pistol itself for a cheap purchase of $260. This little pistol is a beast in the hands of a precise shooter who can pick their shots really well, since it has the best accuracy, velocity, and armor pen of all the pistols in Tarkov. When it's loaded up with either SB-193 or SS-190 ammo, one clean headshot is all you need to get through pretty much any helmet in the game, except for the Class 5 helmets. It also works pretty well at spam firing around a corner, though for body shots, it's not going to do that well against Class 5 chest armor. I don't use it that much personally, but I've been killed many times by a cheeky little pistol runner who made one clean headshot on me with the 5.7. Finally, I just want to bring up the Keter B, another weapon which can technically be used earlier, but you unlock the 30 round mags for it at proper level 3. The Keter B variant is suppressed by default and costs a maximum of 36,000 rubles from proper level 3, often half that price on the flea market. There is no other attachments for it, so you get what you paid for, and this thing is a leg meta monster that you'll almost always see back in your insurance returns. It's not that flashy, but if you get decent at hitting legs or arms with your sprays, the Keter has a really high fire rate and tons of high damage ammo to choose from, including the SP7 or SP8 rounds from proper level 3 that deal up to 77 damage per hit. Literally everything about the Keter B is budget friendly, and while it might not be the most versatile little SMG, you might be surprised at how fast it'll take down a PMC with some well-placed kneecap shots. Well, that about covers it for the builds in this video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and if you try out any of these builds, I hope they work well for you. I actually had more trouble than I thought I would selecting budget builds from level 3 traders. You do unlock a ton of stuff, but most of it is used in more expensive, fully fleshed out builds. So I might have to follow this up with a video looking at the best in-slot setups you can build at level 3 traders. In any case, let me know what you think down in the comments, and tell me about your favorite budget builds. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream, Discord server, and Patreon page down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.